Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Gursant Singh, and I was around Yogi Bhajan for about 30 years, part of his tantric Kundalini yoga cult. You can see me here in a picture from the 1980s, brown jacket there on the right, with Yogi Bhajan and a group of other 3HO people. Now, because I was with Yogi Bhajan's group for so long, I witnessed a lot of disturbing practices by Yogi Bhajan and how he treated his students and how he took vengeance on people that left his organization. So in this video, I want to talk specifically about a lawsuit that was brought by a Mark Baker who left Yogi Bhajan's group. And I want to show how this Mark Baker lawsuit was settled by Yogi Bhajan, his insurance company, for a very large amount of money, $350,000 to be exact. And here is the settlement check. And I want to talk about the specifics of this lawsuit and show how Yogi Bhajan took vengeance on people that left his group. Now, first I want to dispel this myth that is part of the 3HO party line, that these lawsuits that were brought by former students against Yogi Bhajan did not have merit. In fact, these lawsuits did have merit, and I'll show why they had merit. First, I want to read some comments by 3HO people. The first one is by Asat Kadam Singh, who said on Facebook recently, I'll quote, "Every legal case against Yogi Bhajan was either dismissed by the courts because of a lack of reason and proof, and the only one case that was taken on by the court was lost by the accusation party." End quote. Here's another quote from Guru Mustak Singh. You may all know him. He's the director over there at SikhNet, and he's been in the Yogi Bhajan group for his entire life. I actually used to live with his parents in Los Angeles. Guru Mustak says, "I'm always disheartened when people go way out of their way to attack and make criticism of Yogi Bhajan. In most of the cases, this is from people who know nothing or very little about 3HO and Yogi Bhajan. All they see is so-called cult expert websites and unsuccessful lawsuits that were filed by ex-3HO people, and take this as the truth." Okay. This is a video for Guru Mustak and these other 3HO people that shows that these lawsuits did have merit. And what they're saying, these 3HO people, is really a complete lie and is very misleading. These lawsuits did have merit, and as I said, this lawsuit was settled for a very large amount of money, this Mark Baker lawsuit against Yogi Bhajan, for $350,000 to be exact. Here's a copy of the check. Now, I've been investigating, researching this lawsuit in depth. And you can read here the entire complaint that was filed by Mark Baker against Yogi Bhajan. I'll go through parts of this. First, I just want to say how an insurance company that was covering Yogi Bhajan at the time and settled this lawsuit would not just pay $350,000 if this lawsuit did not have any merit. What these insurance companies do is they evaluate the case and they do a discovery, which they did, and they find whether the accusations that are made have merit. If it's just a frivolous lawsuit, they're going to settle. They're not going to settle at all, first of all, or they might just settle for a couple $1,000 just to get rid of it. If maybe they want not to spend money on attorneys. But they could have, if they thought it was frivolous, they could have just spent maybe $25,000 or $35,000 or something on attorneys and got it dismissed by the judge. But obviously, for the insurance company to pay $350,000, they must have really thought this lawsuit had some merit. So let's go through and see what Mark Baker says in this lawsuit. And first, I want to point out here how the lawsuit says every official or semi-official communication or action taken by or on behalf of any officer, element, or person of authority within this Sikh movement, this 3HO, this was Yogi Bhajan's movement in the United States, including the actions complained of here, is taken in furtherance of the aims and purposes of, on behalf of Yogi Bhajan and the Sikh movement, which Yogi Bhajan controls, through, among others, the individual and corporate defendants named and yet to be named in this action. Although the Sikh movement professes to have certain religious beliefs and objectives, it is also, among other things, a local, regional, national, international political movement and commercial enterprise. Now, when they refer to the Sikh movement in this lawsuit, we're not talking about mainstream Sikhs. I want to point that out, make sure everybody realizes that. We're talking about just Yogi Bhajan's 3HO. So the lawsuit goes on to say, on information and belief, the movement in the person of the defendant Gurujot Singh Khalsa and perhaps others is or has been involved in trafficking in drugs and laundering funds derived from drug trafficking, further the general commercial and political aims of its affiliates. Mark Baker was a member of the New Mexico arm of the Sikh movement from the summer of 1977 to early 1985. While he was a Sikh, Mark Baker participated in extensive study of all aspects of security work and soon became a highly valued employee of ACAL, where he was a director of training for the corporation responsible for the security training and supervision ACAL provided to its employees and clients. So Mark Baker was a very valued follower of Yogi Bhajan, and I remember him from the time when he was in the Yogi Bhajan group. So he left Yogi Bhajan, and then what happened was, we'll read here, Mark Baker was on security duty with Yogi Bhajan. So upon or shortly after Mark Baker's 1984 departure from the movement, Mark Baker learned of the movement's involvement in drug trafficking and money laundering. Mark Baker's awareness of this activity was at all pertinent times known to some or all of the defendants. So in the spring of 1986, Mark Baker, already highly accomplished in many aspects of security work, enrolled in the New Mexico State Police, seeking to become a New Mexico State Police officer, and thereby continued to develop his already promising career in security and law enforcement in New Mexico. By the 10th week of his 12-week New Mexico State Police training, Mark Baker stood at or near the top of his class and was widely respected and admired by the faculty as well as his fellow recruits. As a likely candidate to become class valedictorian, he was certain to complete his training successfully and embark on a highly promising tour as a New Mexico State Police officer. So now here comes the part where he alleges that the Yogi Bhajan and his group committed defamation of his character. Mark Baker says here in the complaint, on May 23, 1986, defendant Hadikar Khalsa, acting on behalf of and using the letterhead of defendant Sikh Dharma New Mexico, wrote and signed a letter, a true copy of which is attached to this complaint. The letter contains a massive number of blatant and outrageous falsehoods, including aspersions cast upon Mark Baker's background, character, reputation, performance as a Sikh, potential reliability as a state police officer, hostility to Yogi Bhajan, and other false and outrageous aspersions against Mark Baker. This letter was hand-delivered to the office of the governor of New Mexico, whence it was transmitted to the New Mexico State Police. Also on May 23, 1986, defendant Tortious Singh Khalsa, this is another Yogi Bhajan henchman, wrote and signed a "To Whom It May Concern" memorandum, a true copy of which is attached to this complaint and incorporated here by reference. This memorandum contains a massive number of blatant and outrageous falsehoods, including aspersions cast upon Mark Baker's background, character, reputation, performance as a Sikh, etc. This memorandum was also transmitted to the New Mexico State Police. Guru Jot Singh Khalsa, another Yogi Bhajan henchman, visited then Attorney General Paul Bardak to discuss Mark Baker. During the meeting, Guru Jot alleged that Mark Baker had been dismissed from the Coast Guard because of continued alcohol and substance abuse. The Mark had been intoxicated while on duty at a call of security, or more than one occasion that he had fought with a supervisor, that he posed a threat to the life of Yogi Bhajan and cast other false and outrageous aspirations on Mark Baker. So at the request of Guru Jot, the Attorney General passed this information to the New Mexico State Police in the form of a memorandum. Now, on or about July 1986, Mark Baker was summarily dismissed from the New Mexico State Police Recruit Academy. Since his dismissal, Mark Baker has been unable to obtain appropriate employment in the security field and has been forced to take on night watchman work and odd day jobs in order to support himself. So these alleged outrageous aspersions on Mark Baker really caused damage to Mark Baker. So Mark Baker says, the statements about Mark Baker reflected in Exhibits 3-4 were known to be substantially false by the people who made them at the time they were made. The communications above, described above, approximately caused Mark Baker to be dismissed as a proximate result of the events described above. Mark Baker's reputation was injured irreparably. Defendants are liable to Mark Baker for special general and punitive damages for defamation, as the complaint says. The communications described above were made in an avowed effort by the Sikh movement, by 3HL in other words, under the leadership and control of Yogi Bhajan, to see to it that Mark Baker would be unable to complete his training and employment with the state police, do so in a way that did the greatest possible damage to Mark Baker. Right? Yogi Bhajan to see to it that Mark Baker would be unable to complete his training and employment. Plaintiff's relationship with the New Mexico State constituted a legitimate employment relationship. And then the complaint goes on to say, on information and belief, defendants interfered with Mark Baker's employment relationship because they had left the Sikh community and because he had knowledge of criminal acts which both had been and were about to be engaged in by one or more of the defendants. So in other words, Mark Baker is alleging that Yogi Bhajan did not want this former follower, Mark Baker, to go out there and become a New Mexico State Police with all of his knowledge about criminal acts within the 3HO group. So 3HO put out the word that they wanted him out of this New Mexico State Police. Another law enforcement agent posed an intolerable threat to the drug-related activities alleged above and to standing and reputation of the Sikh movement. Mark Baker's relationship with the state police was severed as a proximate result of the interference by defendants described above. Defendants, that's Yogi Bhajan, acted intentionally, maliciously, or grossly recklessly in conveying these statements as they knew of the falsity of the statements and intended the results that such statements eventually had on Mark Baker's career prospects. Defendants knew or should have known that those results would inevitably cause great mental anguish and severe emotional distress to Mark Baker. As a proximate result of his dismissal from the State Police Academy, under the circumstances described above, Mark Baker suffered and continues to suffer severe emotional distress. Mark Baker also says of an invasion of his privacy. The actions by defendants described above were intended to present Mark Baker to the public and had the inevitable effect of presenting Mark Baker to the public in a false light, and defendants knew or should have known that this would be so. So that's the complaint there. And I think it really shows how Yogi Bhajan would take on these vindictive actions to protect his group, 3HL group, from any kind of scrutiny. I know that Yogi Bhajan told other people about me when he was angry at me, that people shouldn't associate with me. He was angry with me that I wouldn't sell him this house. And I know that Yogi Bhajan told other people that he was going to destroy henchman Vikram Singh, who left Yogi Bhajan's group in 1991. henchman Vikram Singh has told me that Yogi Bhajan threatened to spend $500,000 to destroy him. So Yogi Bhajan was very vindictive and would really spend any amount of money to destroy those that spoke against him or that left his group. And again, this lawsuit shows that the insurance company of Yogi Bhajan deemed this lawsuit to have merit. Otherwise, they wouldn't have paid this $350,000. There's just no way that an insurance company who has years and years of experience with this type of litigation would pay out $350,000 to a lawsuit that was frivolous. So I think this clearly shows that when the 3HL people say that these lawsuits had no merit, or that they were just dismissed, this is completely untrue. Here you have it. $350,000 paid to this Mark Baker in full settlement, you can see there. Well, there were a lot of other lawsuits against Yogi Bhajan, which I invite you to investigate and learn more about. But I wanted to talk about this one specifically because it shows without a doubt that there was merit to this lawsuit. And I'll put the links to this lawsuit. You can view all of the material and read through it yourself. Just what extent Yogi Bhajan and his group would go to destroy somebody who left their group. It's very disturbing. And I think it really shows the character of Yogi Bhajan and his group too. A lot of you may say, well, Yogi Bhajan's gone now. But a lot of these same people that are named as defendants in this lawsuit, you can read them here, are still part of the hierarchy and the leadership there in 3HL. Thank you for your time, and I hope you will read this description there, read more about this, and some other videos I have that describe the other lawsuits that Yogi Bhajan was sued over. Thank you for your time. Waheguਰੂ ji ka khalsa, Waheguਰੂ ji ki fateh.